Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're really getting into the story behind Walmart. It's a name everyone knows, obviously, but its journey has shaped so much more than just shopping.
Exactly. We had a listener, maybe like you, who was really curious about, the whole picture, the history, the societal impact, the economic forces, the business strategies, everything that made Walmart what it is today.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We've got some great source material here.
Yeah, the bargain that built an empire, the unlikely rise of Walmart, and the tenacity of Sam Walton.
Sounds comprehensive.
Yeah,
And a few shorter pieces on strategy and impact, too.
that's right. So we should have a pretty well-rounded view to share.
Okay, let's kick things off. Sam Walton, born 1918. The Great Depression looms large in his early life, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You can't really understand Walton or maybe Walmart without understanding that context. Our sources really emphasize how that period instilled this deep sense of frugality in him.
And resourcefulness, too, it seems. He wasn't sitting idle.
No way. Selling magazine subscriptions, delivering milk, newspapers. A real hustler from a young age. That drive was definitely there early on.
And then his service during the global conflict in the 1940s. U.S. Army Intelligence Corps, reaching captain. How did that feed into his later path?
Well, the sources suggest it really cemented his desire to get into retailing. Maybe the structure, the logistics, something clicked. It's not the most obvious path to discount stores, but it seems to have been influential for him.
Right. Before he struck out on his own, he spent time at JCPenney, getting that foundational retail knowledge.
Crucial experience. But the real start was after the service, 1945. He gets a loan from his father-in-law, 20 grand, plus 5 of his own, and buys his first store.
A Ben Franklin franchise in Newport, Arkansas. And even then, the strategy was clear.
Yeah, undercutting the competition. That low-price focus was there from day one. He saw an opportunity.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing. That Newport lease situation in 1950.
Right. Big setback. The landlord wanted the store for his own son, basically kicked Walton out by not renewing the lease.
Ouch. But a valuable lesson, I guess.
Hugely valuable. The sources point to this as a key moment where he learned about, the importance of controlling your own destiny, maybe your own real estate, or at least securing really solid lease terms.
So from that challenge, he heads to Bentonville, Arkansas. Tiny town, right?
Right.
3,000 people.
Yeah, really small. And that's where Walton's 5 and 10 opens. And this is where you really see him start to crystallize that core philosophy.
Stack it high, sell it cheap, and treat customers like neighbors.
That's the one. It sounds simple, but it was potent. High volume, low margins, but with that personal touch. You can almost, sketch the blueprint for Walmart right there.
Fast forward to 1962, Rogers, Arkansas. The first official Walmart discount city opens. This is the real start of the chain.
And the name itself, Walmart, apparently came from his assistant, Bob Bogle.
And the story goes they even shortened it initially. No hyphen, single M, just to save money on the sign.
That's the legend. Speaks volumes about that early frugality, doesn't it? Of course, the logo's gone through quite the evolution since then.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
There's the original star one, right? Walmart.
Yep, used till 81. Then the hyphenated version, most people probably remember, that lasted ages, well into the 2000s. Still see it on some trucks, maybe.
Then the Spark came in around 2007, got tweaked in 2008.
Right, leading up to the current one, which they rolled out January 13th, 2025. More modern, digital-friendly Spark, new font. Everyday Sans, I think they call it.
Interesting how even the branding reflects the company's journey. But back to the early strategy focusing on rural America, that was different from Kmart or Target, wasn't it?
Very different. They were all about the suburbs, the growing population centers. Walton went where they weren't.
Why was that so effective, targeting these smaller towns?
Well, several reasons. Less competition, for one. Lower real estate costs, definitely. And he tapped into these underserved markets. People in smaller towns wanted low prices too, and the big chains were basically ignoring them.
Building loyalty in places others overlooked.
Exactly. It gave Walmart this strong foundation, this foothold in areas where they could really dominate early on.
And that price obsession was relentless, cutting margins down to maybe 20%. Getting it all on volume.
Absolutely. The example cited is like a blender that might normally sell for $10 or $12, he'd sell it for $7.97, just constantly driving prices down.
thinking the sheer number of sales would make up for the thin profit on each item.
That was the core bet, and it paid off. He also got creative with suppliers, trying to bypass wholesalers whenever possible.
Going direct to factories.
Yeah, sometimes even using like intermediary companies if manufacturers were hesitant to deal directly with this upstart discounter, always looking for that cost advantage.
It sounds like it wasn't easy, though. People were skeptical. Walton's folly, they called it.
Oh yeah, lots of skepticism. Established players didn't think the model could work, especially in small towns. Getting loans was tough initially.
Who was betting on him then?
Local investors, mostly. People in Arkansas who knew him, maybe believed in his vision when the big banks wouldn't take the risk.
But he started proving them wrong. And logistics seems to be where they really innovated. That helicopter story from '66.
Isn't that great? Flying around in a helicopter himself, scouting store locations from the air. Talk about hands-on.
And then building their own truck fleet in 1970, centralizing warehousing back in Bentonville. That sounds pretty advanced for the time.
It was incredibly forward-thinking. Most retailers relied on third-party trucking or complex distribution networks. By building their own, Walmart gained massive control.
Reducing costs, speeding things up.
Exactly. More efficient deliveries, better inventory management. It laid the groundwork for their later just-in-time systems. They could get products to stores faster and cheaper than competitors. That logistical prowess became a huge, huge advantage.
And it wasn't just trucks and warehouses. He was data-driven even before computers were everywhere, right? Tracking sales on legal pads.
Yeah, meticulous record keeping, visiting stores constantly, talking to managers, customers. He had this Sunday pledge thing with managers, getting sales figures, always analyzing, always looking for an edge.
Alongside the numbers, there was this unique company culture he cultivated.
The Walmart cheer. Kind of famous or infamous, depending on your view.
The Saturday morning meetings, too.
Right, bringing everyone together, sharing successes, problems, reinforcing the culture, and then profit sharing, introduced in '71. That was a big deal.
This isn't my company, it's ours.
Yeah.
That quote really sticks out.
It does. It aimed to create this sense of shared ownership, motivating employees, making them feel like partners. How effective it was long-term is debated, but it was definitely part of the early culture building.
Going public in 1970 must have been a major turning point.
Huge. Raised about $3.3 million, which sounds small now, but it fueled significant expansion. Allowed them to grow from just a handful of stores to 15 across 3 states, Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma.
And by 1975, the growth was accelerating. 125 stores, $340 million in sales. Still focusing on those smaller towns, under 10,000 people.
Yep. Still exploiting what the sources called the blind spots of the bigger retailers who were chasing the urban markets.
But this is also where that store-the-community paradox starts to emerge, isn't it?
It is. On one hand, Walmart comes in, offers lower prices, maybe more selection than the local shops could manage. Consumers often like that.
But the flip side.
The flip side was the impact on existing Main Street businesses. The local hardware store, the family-run grocer, the clothing shop. They often just couldn't compete on price.
Leading to closures and a real change in the character of those towns.
Exactly. So while providing consumer benefits, it often led to this hollowing out of the traditional local business core. A really complex societal shift starts happening.
Moving into the 80s and 90s, the expansion just explodes, right? Going nationwide.
Aggressively. By 1990, they're in 27 states. Getting into California that year was a big symbolic step, truly coast to coast.
What enabled that kind of rapid growth?
Well, the model was proven. The logistics network was incredibly efficient by now. Brand recognition was growing. And they had the capital, especially after going public, to just keep building.
And they kept investing heavily in technology during this period.
Continuously. That IBM system back in '75 was just the start. Then the people greeters in '83.
Which was partly customer service, partly loss prevention, I suppose.
Probably a mix, yeah. But the big one was that satellite network in '83. $24 million investment, which was massive then.
Linking everything in real-time stores, headquarters, distribution centers.
Game-changing. Real-time inventory tracking, instant communication. It gave them unparalleled operational control and efficiency. Then came barcode readers, nearly universal in stores by '88.
And Retail Link in '91. Sharing sales data with suppliers.
Yeah, another leap forward, letting suppliers see exactly what was selling, where, and when. It allowed for incredibly fine-tuned inventory management, reducing stockouts and overstock, just tightening that whole supply chain.
They also diversified in the 80s with Sam's Club.
Right, 1983. The membership warehouse model, targeting small businesses, bulk buyers. Another way to leverage their buying power and reach a different customer segment.
And then the Supercenter arrives in '88, Washington, Missouri.
That was another huge shift, combining the discount store with a full grocery store, plus other services.
Well, one-stop shop.
Exactly. Immense convenience for shoppers. It really hammered traditional supermarkets and further cemented Walmart's dominance. By '88, they were the most profitable retailer in the U.S.
And then they looked abroad. Mexico in '91.
Yep, the start of international expansion. Canada followed in '94. Often through acquisition, they bought the Woolco chain there. Then into South America, Argentina, Brazil by '95.
Was international expansion easy?
Not always. It presented huge opportunities, obviously, but also big challenges. Different cultures, regulations, competitors. Some markets worked well, others less so. They learned as they went. Acquisitions were often key, like buying Pace warehouse clubs from Kmart, Kuhn's Big K, more value earlier on. It was a faster way into some markets.
Even the slogan changed slightly in '94. Always the low price. Always became always low prices. Always.
Subtle.
Subtle, yeah. Maybe softening it slightly. Hard to see the exact reasoning. That same year, 1994, they also introduced Code Adam for lost children in stores.
Showing responsiveness to safety concerns. And they tried the Made in America angle, too, with Sam's American Choice in '91.
Right. Responding to a certain consumer sentiment, though the actual impact on domestic manufacturing was, well, debated even then, given their overall sourcing strategies. But reaching $100 billion in sales in 1997, that was just a staggering milestone.
Entering the 21st century, the evolution continues. Neighborhood markets pop up in '98.
Yeah, that smaller format, designed to compete more directly with grocery stores and drugstores, offering convenience for quicker trips, especially for food.
Closer to neighborhoods, easier parking, maybe?
That was the idea. Meanwhile, international strategy continued to evolve, entering some new markets, but also exiting places like Germany and South Korea where the model just wasn't succeeding as planned.
And the tech focus never really stopped, did it? No, if anything, it accelerated. Acquiring Voodoo for streaming, launching a fintech startup more recently, experimenting with drone delivery back in 2015, services like carrier pickup. Always trying to adapt, especially with the rise of e-commerce.
And they had to adapt significantly during the recent coronavirus pandemic, too.
Oh, massively. Store closures, adjusted hours, mask rules, changes to employee benefits, paying out special bonuses.
Right.
It was a huge operational challenge, like for many businesses.
We also saw moves towards environmental initiatives, like those experimental green stores around 2005.
And efforts to appeal to maybe slightly more affluent shoppers, upgrading some store designs, adding more organic food options, trying to broaden the appeal while sticking to the low price core.
But it's impossible to talk about Walmart in the 21st century without acknowledging the controversies and criticism.
Absolutely. The sources detail numerous lawsuits and ongoing scrutiny regarding labor practices, wages, benefits, anti-union stance. Issues of discrimination have come up, and safety concerns, tragically highlighted by events like the Black Friday Stampede death in 2008.
These are really significant societal discussions tied directly to Walmart's scale and practices.
They are, and it's part of the complex legacy. Even things like the logo redesigns, including the latest in 2025, are part of managing that massive public image. And we're seeing adjustments like removing self-checkout in some stores recently in 2024. But fundamentally, their global presence remains immense across multiple continents as of 2023.
Let's circle back to Sam Walton, the person. Married Helen Robson in 43, 4 kids. Active in his church, emphasized service leadership. How much did his personal ethos permeate the company?
The sources definitely suggest his core values, thrift, hard work, customer focus, were deeply embedded in the early Walmart culture. That idea of service leadership, being hands-on, serving customers and employees, that was his model, at least aspirationally.
His passing in 1992 from cancer must have been a pivotal moment.
It was. But the company had grown so large by then, and the systems and culture were established. His foundational principles continued to guide it, even as it evolved. Receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom just before he died really speaks to the scale of his impact.
And his legacy lives on through his family, still one of the wealthiest, and institutions like the Walton College of Business. Time magazine naming him one of the 100 most influential people of the 20th century. Hard to argue with that.
Definitely. Which brings us squarely to this idea of the Walmart effect.
Right. The huge impact, good and bad, or maybe just complex, that a Walmart opening has on an area.
Exactly. The everyday low prices strategy was obviously a boon for many consumers, but it put immense pressure on competitors.
Leading to bankruptcies, changing the whole retail landscape, How did they sustain that dominance?
It's that combination we've touched on. Aggressive pricing fueled by economies of scale. That super efficient supply chain built on technology and logistics, market saturation, especially early on. It created this powerful engine that was very hard to compete against.
And that pressure extended to suppliers, right? Driving down costs, which often meant looking overseas.
Yes, the push for lower prices from Walmart definitely encouraged global sourcing and put pressure on domestic manufacturers. It's a key part of the economic impact story.
And consumer habits changed too. That one-stop shopping convenience is powerful.
Hugely powerful.
Yep.
It shifted how people shop, what they prioritize. There's a psychological and cultural dimension too, shaping our perception of value, commodifying holidays. Think about Black Friday culture.
Which often came at the expense of Main Street, as we discussed. That homogenization of retail.
Yeah, the decline of unique local shops and the rise of identical shopping experiences across different towns. It impacts community dynamics, even family dynamics. Sometimes the Walmart economy affects wages, job types.
And those labor practice criticisms, low wages, anti-union stance are a recurring theme.
They are. Alongside ethical and environmental questions about cheap goods and global supply chains, it's all part of the Walmart effect. Though it's also true that in some areas, Walmart does become a kind of community hub.
And its influence stretches even into pop culture through media sales and what they choose to stock.
Absolutely. Their buying decisions can shape what becomes mainstream.
So wrapping this up, it's an incredible journey. From one store in rural Arkansas to this global giant. It's a masterclass in certain business strategies, the relentless pursuit of low prices, but also a story with profound and often debated societal consequences.
Couldn't say it better. We've traced the history, the strategies, Walton's vision, and the ripple effects economic, cultural, social.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, our listener. When a company achieves this kind of scale, influencing what we buy, where we work, the health of our local economies, what responsibilities come with that power? And what's the true, full cost of everyday low prices?
It's a deep question, and if you want to explore further, there's plenty more to dig into. The ongoing debates about labor, Walmart's sustainability initiatives, how they're competing now with e-commerce giants like Amazon. It's a story that continues to unfold.
Definitely worth keeping an eye on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of Walmart.